There are moments in the dusty pages of history when time seems to stand still. Humanity's glorious progress can vanish into nothingness in the face of nature's immense power. Today I will take you to one of the most tragic and fascinating moments in history. 79 A.D. to Pompeii, the jewel of the Roman Empire. That day had begun like any other day for the tens of thousands of people living in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. But this ordinary day would be the beginning of a tragedy that would be remembered forever. Come, let's witness together the last 24 hours of Pompeii, the city where time stood still. The sun was rising, shimmering over the azure waters of the Bay of Naples. The cobblestone streets of Pompeii were beginning to come alive with the bustling activity of a new day. The aroma of fresh bread wafted from the bakeries. Market vendors stocked their stalls with the freshest produce, and children ran joyfully through the streets. While the city's wealthy began their days in the courtyards of their opulent villas, the slaves hurried about, carrying out their masters' daily tasks. That morning, Pompeii was a vibrant tableau, reflecting the prosperity and vitality of the Roman Empire. The majestic Mount Vesuvius, standing right next to the city, was merely a geographical feature to the people of Pompeii. Its lush slopes were covered with vineyards, and it had been silent for centuries. No one even remembered that he had once been a fire-breathing giant. The people regarded her as a protector, the source of fertile lands. But deep within the mountain, an immense pressure that had built up over thousands of years was waiting for the right moment to erupt. That day, that moment had arrived. Around midday, the ground began to shake slightly. These kinds of minor tremors were unusual in the area, so most people didn't pay much attention to them. But this time it was different. The tremors were becoming more frequent and more intense. Then a tremendous noise erupted from the mountaintop. It was as if the earth was splitting in two. When the people of Pompeii turned their heads towards Mount Vesuvius, they were met with an incredible sight. The mountain top had shattered, spewing a massive cloud of smoke and ash that rose miles into the sky. This cloud, resembling a pine tree in shape, covered the sky and completely obscured the sun. Daytime instantly turned into pitch-black night. Panic spread through the city like a virus. The cheerful morning had been replaced by a deafening roar and an indescribable fear. From the sky, tiny, lightweight but deadly stones resembling pumice, called lapilli, began to rain down. Although these stones initially appeared small and harmless, they quickly grew to the size of walnuts and began raining down on people, piercing through the roofs of buildings. The screams of fleeing people mingled with the roar of the volcano. Some sought refuge in their homes, locking their doors and waiting for this nightmare to pass. Others tried to flee the city, grabbing their valuables. But where could they go? Those who rushed to the harbor saw that the sea was churning with huge waves, and the ships could not dock. Those trying to escape by land were unable to advance due to the hailstorm and heavy ash. The streets suddenly turned into labyrinths. People couldn't see where they were going because of the thick ash. They were bumping into each other, falling and being trampled. As the hours passed, the scale of the disaster became even more horrific. The falling ashes and stones had begun to cover the city with a layer several meters thick. The roofs of the buildings couldn't withstand the weight and were collapsing one after another, burying those hiding inside alive. The air was filled with poisonous gases. Breathing had become almost impossible. Pompeii had turned into a veritable hell. Amidst this chaos, the purest forms of humanity were also witnessed. Families embracing each other, mothers trying to protect their children, spouses searching for their loved ones. At every street corner, a story of love and sacrifice intertwined with despair was being written. And then came the most fatal blow, the pyroclastic flow. It was a deadly cloud of gas, ash, and rock particles, hundreds of degrees Celsius, moving at hundreds of kilometers per hour. The stream swept down the mountainside like an avalanche, swallowing everything in its path. When this deadly wave reached Pompeii, there was no chance of escape left. Within seconds, the terrifying heat and poisonous gases wiped out the last remaining living beings in the city. This current virtually froze people's final moments. The high temperature instantly shocked their bodies, causing their muscles to contract. Then the fine ashes that fell enveloped these convulsed bodies like a mold. Over time, as bodies decompose, what remains are voids that tell the tragedy of that final moment. These gaps would later form the famous petrified human figures that archaeologists would fill with plaster, showing us the drama of that moment in all its starkness. Lovers embracing each other, a man praying, a woman dying with her unborn baby in her womb. They were all trapped in eternity in those final moments. When Vesuvius fell silent, Pompeii was no more. The city was completely buried under a layer of ash and pumice stone about 6 meters thick. Generations have passed, empires have fallen, and new ones have risen. The name of Pompeii has become a legend, mentioned only in ancient texts. That was until the 18th century, when a well-digger accidentally stumbled upon the ruins of that lost city. The excavations that began that day unearthed one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. The city that emerged from the ashes looked as if it had been abandoned just yesterday. Leftover bread in bakeries, amphoras in shops, graffiti on walls, and most importantly, the petrified bodies of the people who lost their lives on that tragic day. Pompeii awoke from its 1,700-year slumber beneath the ashes, offering us invaluable insights into daily life during the Roman era. Today, when you visit Pompeii, you don't just wander among stone ruins. At the same time, you listen to the silent stories of thousands of people who once lived here, laughed, cried, loved, and then suddenly disappeared. When you look at those petrified bodies, you are confronted not with the cold face of catastrophe, but with humanity's most fragile and authentic moment. They are silent witnesses who remind us of the power of nature and how precious life is. The story of Pompeii is much more than just a disaster. This is a miraculous story where time stood still for a moment. A civilization was preserved beneath the ashes, and thousands of years later it resurfaced to tell us about our own past. Vesuvius's wrath may have destroyed a city, but it also immortalized it by protecting it from the ravages of time. All that remains are the ashes those silent stories whispered. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to continue exploring these mysterious and thought-provoking pages of history together, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Until our next trip, goodbye.